Hi everyone, 8 o'clock on our day 4. So I thought today I will talk about something I did today after a long time, which is we have our pantry where we keep all our groceries and all that stuff, dal, chawal, everything. And today we decided we'll clean the pantry. I must say, I shouldn't say we, rather generously. My husband's the one that's very organized. And it's been kind of interesting because I've been in India for over 10 years now. And for the, 25 years before that, I lived in America. There we did everything ourselves. So the pantry was extremely well organized because when we moved into the house, my cousin Rajaka and Rajat went shopping and they brought boxes that are very, very similar and there have labels on each of them, and the pantry was extremely well organized when we lived in America. And we cooked, we shopped, so we knew exactly what was there in the pantry at any given point of time. So we didn't have to keep looking at, what was going on, etc. And then we moved to India, and in India we have a cook, we have a household help who cleans the house, etc. So in a very strange way, in India we don't do anything ourselves. There's somebody else manages the kitchen. So I always felt it's like not my kitchen, And we ask her, what do you need every month? She gives a list and we bring that, and we've had the same cook for the last 10 years. And so we bring it and we never ask any questions. And, just when this happened, we said, let's just make sure there's some rice and dal and stuff, and that's about it. But today we said, let's just really clean our pantry. And we took everything out and looked at what we have. And I was really, in some way felt so guilty, in some ways felt appalled at how much stuff we had in our pantry. I think what happened was we would bring dal one month and she would put it in one box, put it at the back, and forget it was there, and ask for dal again. So we literally have like 6 packets of dal and 3 packets of flour and 5 packets of something else. And I have so much turmeric that I think I don't need turmeric for the next 5 years because you use this much every time you cook, right? So I was doing all this and I thought about, like, when did we actually get into the idea of storing things? So I started thinking about when I was a kid, when I was growing up, in our house, like daily stuff, my grandmother shopped for everything and we had a storeroom where we kept most of the things. But like, for example, fresh vegetables was an everyday thing. My dad went to the bank for something at the end of the street and there was a lady in front of it who was our friend, and we said hello to her and bought a few vegetables and brought it home. And then my dad had this habit, in front of our house, he built a kind of a seating area, where you could sit outside. And my dad, my uncles would all sit out there because most of the times our uncles kind of lived with us. And these are all men in those days in their 70s, 60s probably. And they would all sit there in the morning. And early morning, this lady would come, this old lady. In those days, she was in her 70s or 80s, so they felt she was older, they had to take care of her. She would bring a big basket of green vegetables. And it was the same 2 vegetables. In Telugu, we call it chukkakura and maybe mentikura, 2 types of vegetables. She had only those 2 vegetables. She would come every day and she'd say, sir, buy something, so boni, I'll get it. It'll be good for my business and all that stuff. And hey Satya, Um, so, so I would say, "Oh, Dad, don't buy the same thing every day." And he'd be like, "Oh, poor thing, this old lady comes, so we better give her something." So every day we bought this green vegetable. And after a while, we all got sick of eating that, but still we bought it and gave to our neighbors or something of that sort. The bottom line is, at one level, food was a fresh thing. We bought every day fresh stuff and we cooked it, and that was it. And next day, again she came or somebody else came, or we went to the end of the street and bought it or whatever. So vegetables were on a regular basis. Now, when you think of staples like rice or dal or whatever, they were bought for the month or 2 months or so. And when I went to holidays to my grandmother's house in Eluru, they had a staircase, and underneath the staircase where there was open space, and that space was filled with rice. And there was a little window, you could open, and you put a ladder and you opened the window and went in and, scooped up rice. And at some point it went so far down that somebody went in there and brought it, etc. But this was rice for the whole year. It was kept under the staircase, but it had good storage conditions. I don't know how they did it, but somehow it lasted all year long. So the staples were bought maybe every 2 months, or in this case, once a year. The rice came from the fields and all that stuff. So the staples were also not bought on a regular basis every week or so. So you bought vegetables very, very fresh, and the staples very rarely, like, maybe 6 times a year or once a year or so. And I think we live in a world where we neither have the space to store something for all year long, nor do we do things very, very fresh. And we don't pay attention to what's already there. Not we, I don't want to say we, I'd say I don't pay attention to what's there, because somebody else was running the kitchen and I trusted she knew what was going on. But for her, I need to understand that this is a job. This is not something, her home or her money that's going to buying the groceries. So she wanted to make sure stuff was there, and she didn't quite check the pantry all the way to see if the stuff was there or not. So the bottom line is that we ended up with so much of some stuff and so little of other stuff. And also so much stuff that was expired. And if there's one thing that really bothers me or kills me, is when you have to throw stuff out. I just feel somebody has spent so much time growing that food, and it was put in a truck and brought somewhere and sold in a store, and I bought it, and I brought it home, and when you waste that and throw it away, it really, really bothers me. But today I threw away literally one big bucket full of stuff, because so many things were expired, or they were getting spoiled, etc. And I also kept a lot of the doubles and triples I had in one place, so that I can give it to my friends. So I have somebody saying, maternal grandmom, when I hear your stories. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we all miss our grandparents and our summer holidays, absolutely. And I really started thinking a lot about division of labor in some ways. I have, if I look at my own stories that I told you, I had a whole childhood where I didn't worry where the food came from. It was there. If I went to our village, it came from the fields, it was there, it was stored, etc. In my house, there was a Kirana store right down the street. Whatever we want came from there, and it was stored for a few months, etc. And so someone else did all that. So I didn't have to do it at all. So it's sort of like, I'm working somewhere and someone else managed the company. I didn't have to worry about where is the investment coming from or whatever. I just had to do my job and I collected my salary. That's what it was. Whereas vegetables were like being a daily wage worker. You bought them every day, you kept them fresh every day. And so it was one or the other. Then in US, where when we were on our own, it's sort of like you're an entrepreneur, you're the owner of the shop. So you owned everything and you know where everything is in every corner. Like in my pantry, I knew how many bottles of wine were there and how much this was and exactly where the candles were and where the party ware was. And I just knew the lay of the land of my pantry. And I could see very clearly in the boxes what was running short so I could get it. So I was completely in charge. Whereas the situation in India is sort of like I'm running a company and there's a bunch of people working. You delegate the work to them, assuming they're doing their job, but I didn't pay enough attention to putting checks and balances in place. So I assumed that she was going to work like as though she owned the house and she was going to take care of the kitchen. But to her this was a job, and understandably so. So she didn't take care of it the way I would have taken care of it myself. So there is a lesson in this for me of to be a good manager. A lot of times I like delegating things and I don't like to ask if it's done or not. And I assume the person will behave as though they own it and will get it done. But it's important to have checks and balances in place so that you are, you're checking if the rice is done or not all along the way. So it was such an eye-opening thing for me to clean the pantry today. And now I know where everything is. Tomorrow I'll post a little picture of the cleaned up pantry. And all the credit, by the way, goes to my husband because he's the one who really is the person who puts everything in order. I can kind of say, oh my God, this is a problem, but he's the one who knows how to fix it. And these are the same boxes we bought. We moved into our house in 1995 in California. 1996 in California. And that's when we bought all these boxes with labels on them. And we still have them, And so in some ways we are very careful about what we have. We take care of them. And in the other ways, we haven't taken care of what the boxes contain. Are they fresh? Are they good? Do we need so many of them? Etc. So how does it in any way relate to what I do? To me, I love finding connections between unusual things. So when I observe something, I want to say, how does this apply to the way I am a mother, or maybe in the way I am a leader, or in the way I run a business, or I try to apply to something else. So as I was talking about, this exercise, this little exercise today, taught me one thing of the importance of giving ownership and at the same time putting checks and balances. And especially at a time when we are all working from home, this has become even more important. Because when we all get to work and we are all working together, there is some natural checks and balances. You walk over to somebody and say, hey, has it been done or not? It's not. So 5 of us get together in a room, quickly we figure it out, and then everybody goes and does that. And when that doesn't happen, when we are not with each other all the time, how do you put those checks and balances in place? And this is something new I feel I need to learn, both at home. Now, see, the thing is, I have not been home. I've been traveling a lot. I'm at work a lot. So literally, I never overlap with my cook at home, except at 6:30 in the morning when she comes, and I leave home by 8. And by the time I come, she leaves. So at home, I never overlapped with her. So we never had that kind of like that work situation where I can check, hey, do we have this or not, etc. I just trusted her word for it. So I didn't put the checks and balances in place at home where I was not at home. And now it's the other way around. I'm not at work. I'm not with the rest of the people at work. I am away and everybody is away. So the kind of checks and balances we need to put to stay productive is very important. A couple of days ago I talked about the pink zone and the blue zones in my calendar. Is first of all, working from home, you have to put the checks and balances on yourself to have enough of blue zones, enough of working time. And on top of it, you have to learn how to put those checks and balances on people who you manage. On one hand, you don't want them to fill in a time card minute by minute, what did you do from 8 to 8:10 or 8:10 to 8:20 kind of a thing. Nor can you say, hey, I hope this job will get done, So that is the balance I'm trying to create when you're not there. Like at home, when I'm not there, how do I put the checks and balances for the work to get done at home? And when I'm not at work with the rest of the people the way we are, how do you put the checks and balances in place so the work gets done? And finally, how do you put the checks and balances on yourself so you make sure you're productive when you're at home or when you're traveling or when you're doing other things? So this was kind of my learning for today in terms of learning to put checks and balances in place. And we are trying a few things, how do we have productivity tools? How do we use them? And how do we stay connected with each other? How do we know which project is being led by who and who is doing what, and without having to call each other 15 times? How do we do that? So we were looking at various tools, and one of our dear friends is in Hyderabad, and he's a young entrepreneur, and he's developing a productivity tool called Fluho, and it's an Indian company. So I told my team, let's try this out. I mean, we haven't tried it yet. We are just going to download it and try it. And we thought, why not we take a product from someone we know, from an Indian company, and try it out and see how productive could we be. So we're gonna do that. And this is where I love in the world. It's I don't know what it's like, a circular world. We used to one of our employees is a person called Akshay. He used to work with us. And through Ink, obviously, he got to know Abhi, who is the young entrepreneur who started Fluho, and they got to be good friends. And after Akshay left Ink, he traveled for a bit. He went back home, took care of his dad, and he was traveling, ended up in Hyderabad, been in touch with Abhi, and they've been talking to each other, etc. So Akshay is ready to start back. And so he actually joined Fluho with Abhi. And guess what? He's become the account manager for us, to see how we can use Fluho at Ink. And I was just laughing yesterday. So I told Akshay that you can leave Ink, but Ink will never leave you, and it's sort of, and that's what life's all about, is having this lattice, this network. So we are all connected one way or the other, and we exchange talent, we exchange people, we exchange ideas, and we stay together as a family. And so it's sort of a, kind of a funny story about how we can all stay in touch with each other. So it's FLUJO Fluho. So maybe you all can try also. I can't vouch for the product, nor can I say it's bad because I haven't tried it yet. And we're going to try it soon. And yes, the circle of ink, absolutely. And I love that. I love the circle. I love these unusual connections. And I must say something a little bit from my personal life. There are some amazing exercises we can do to do these very unusual connections. And I've learned this actually when I was studying in Portland State. I did my MBA with a minor in theater arts. And this is the one thing I want to say that I learned is the importance to mix different disciplines, And so I'll tell you this little story of how I got into this. Is that I felt, you give me any two scenarios. You can say, a man in Timbuktu and a grain of rice, and I can create some story that connects the two. And where I learned this is when I was in Portland State. I did my MBA with a minor in theater. As I was saying, I see Nishchay. Hi Nishchay, another ex-Ink person, and I loved the combination of the two. And I would be in this very business, commerce, accounting, computers, all these things. And then I would go to my theater classes. And, one of the things they make you do, I just thought, you go take this theater class and I'm going to be this one actress and voila, in 2 days, anybody can act. I used to think, what's the big deal about acting? Anybody can act. So, but it's only after I studied it for 2 years, I realized how tough it is. So hopefully I will do one session about my whole theater experience, but let me give you the short stories. One of the exercises they make you do in theater, they made us do in theater, is to imagine a character's life. So when you get a play or when you get a movie script or whatever, you're already this 25-year-old woman or a 50-year-old woman or whatever. You are playing a certain character. And you are playing that character at that age, okay? But for that character to be that at that age, there's a whole bunch of things that happened in their background that got them to be who they are. What I am today is a combination of the kind of parents I had, the kind of family I had, the kind of homes I lived in, the kind of traveling I got to do, and what irks me, what upsets me, what makes me happy. All these are a collection of my background, right? So to be authentic in that character, you have to create a background for that character. So whatever character you're playing, you have to create a story for this character. And so that means you have to imagine who this person would be. So one of the first exercises we were given is that you just look out of the window and you look at anything and you have to create a story. You see, a person plucking flowers and filling in their basket. Now you make a story about this person. This person is plucking the flowers because they're religious. They're going to go and pray to God at home, and because she's alone and nobody else seemed to be in the house, but she looks married, so maybe her husband is living somewhere else in another country, and she's praying for his good his good life. And if you want your imagination to go crazy, you can say that her husband is going for a new job interview today in blah blah company, and if that happens, their lives would change, and that's why this puja is very important to her. That's why she's being very picky about picking these flowers, and on and on and on. So you just look at a person, a scenario, and you create a story, and you make it as elaborate as you can, and you have to find a connection between your story and what this person is doing. So you have to be able to build a story about anything that's happening around you. So this finding connections between unusual things is what I learned from my theater classes. So when I clean my pantry, when I'm throwing away all this food, and when I'm thinking of why did I not organize it the way I should have organized, I am looking for that lesson as to how this can teach me be a better manager and better apply it to work. And everything I do, I learn something, and I feel it can be applied to my work. It can be applied to me to be a better person. So the big wrap up for today is that when you're managing a group of people, make sure that you delegate and at the same time have checks and balances. I have some great news for you. Tomorrow evening, I'll have a guest, Dr. Vishal Rao, who's an amazing surgeon, and he's actually created a very low cost instrument that allows someone to get their voice back at a fraction of the cost. And he's been very, very instrumental in the state of Karnataka to help the government to come to certain decisions about what they need to do about COVID, etc. He's a very thought-provoking person, and he'll be here with me tomorrow. So I'll chat for a bit and I'll bring him on, and you can comment, you can ask questions, etc. And most probably, and I'll announce it again, most probably on Monday evening, we'll have Pooja Dhingra, who is the macaroon queen of India, and she's a restaurateur. And so how does it feel to have your restaurants be shut? What is she doing differently now? So these are the next couple of days, and there'll be more guests, and I'll keep look out every day. I'll post something so you know what's happening that day. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow, 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time again. Bye-bye.